Welcome back to another edition of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson, and another major championship is upon us. It is the PGA Championship week. We are going to be heading to Valhalla. I'm actually not going to be heading to Valhalla, but the world of professional golf is heading to Valhalla. Kyle Porter, you're not heading to Valhalla, but we're going to go there in our minds today. Get ready for the PGA Championship with our typical 5 Things preview. Kyle Porter of CBS Sports, as well as The Normal Sporter, a newsletter that's well worth your subscription. And my favorite thing about having a free newsletter is telling people if they don't like it, I'll refund them. But Kyle, welcome on, and thank you for joining me and chatting about the PGA Championship. Are you ready for the second major of the year?
I am. I actually am going to Valhalla, but I'm
you are?
going a little bit later. I won't be there until Wednesday, week of. So just later than normal. I'm doing great. I'm very excited about the second major of the year. I feel bad for you because you had, for your first 5 things about the majors this year, a Masters champion, a former PGA Tour winner, and now you have to deal with me for the second one. So I apologize for that.
Well, listen, I'm going for variety, different. People that excel at different things. We could have a little bit more fun than the lead analyst at CBS can have on the pod.
That's true. You're trying to make the variance between the handicaps of people you're having on as wide as humanly possible.
Well, I always enjoy our conversations. I don't,
For sure.
There's this nomenclature, this belief that you have to be so accomplished to talk about any sport. I don't think that's necessarily a true statement. I think that no matter what your skill level on the golf course, it's fair if you put the work in. And I think one of the things I respect about you, Kyle, is you put in so much work in terms of preparation, research, and like I always like I'm seeing your tweets, and I'm like, God, he's grinding on this stuff. So I think if you are a professional, which I would say that you are very much a professional, in terms of a golf media personality, then it doesn't matter how you play golf. It actually probably helps you if you aren't as good. Sometimes you think about things differently.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think it does help to come from outside of that sort of world. It gives you a different viewpoint, I think. What do you think about when we'll get into I know the 5 things here real quick, but what do you think about when players, whether it's golfers or you see this, I feel like in basketball and football a lot, where players complain about what media sometimes say or write about them. They're like, oh, well, you never did this. You never played. You don't understand. Like, what do you, have you noticed that? And like, what do you think about that?
I do think there is some of that in golf. I think like we're seeing a buddy of mine that I used to play pickup basketball with just wrote this book about D3 basketball players who are basically like running the NBA. There's like
Wait, was this the thread? Was this the
Ben
TNT
Kaplan.
thread?
Yeah, Ben
Yeah,
Kaplan.
that was amazing.
Yeah, but so he wrote this book, and it's like all about D3 basketball players that are now like there's this like huge amount of people that are running the game of basketball that didn't play professional basketball.
Mm.
And I think there's an aspect of when you listen, like in golf, you're never going to understand what it feels like to have a putt for $3 million or, a major championship. But when you're short on skill, you know what that usually makes people do? It makes them
work harder
and think more about how they can get somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I think that's the flip side of that argument, where you need to have felt that, well, like you probably haven't thought about the sport as much as somebody who played D3 golf, who was always wondering why they weren't as good as, the phenom. And because for the phenom, it's kind of like simple. It's like what DJ says about fades. It's like, you want to fade it, make sure you fade it. For someone not as skilled, they have to really think about like the technical aspects of how they're trying to hit a fade. They can't just naturally do it. So I think there is like I think we're seeing it in across sports is that, you know, being a great player doesn't mean that you're a great executive or a great
Yeah.
analyst or a great mind. And I think, you know, we're seeing it come. I mean, like No Laying Up's doing the simulcast this week. I think that's a huge step for golf.
Yeah. I think the thing that gets lost sometimes in a lot of, like, not just golf, but basketball or baseball or whatever, is those of us who are talking or writing or thinking about the game for a living, we're obviously not comparing you to like, we're not comparing, I'm not comparing Ben, let's just say Ben Griffin.
Yeah.
I'm not comparing his game to mine. Like, obviously he's like 5 standard deviations better than I am at golf. I'm comparing you to Rory and Morikawa and Brooks, right? Because that's like, I'm talking about this subset of people, not like, I think sometimes as analysts, and this happens on TV a lot, you're like analysts or broadcasters say, oh, these guys are all so good. It's like, well, yeah, obviously, like compared to you and I, they're unbelievable. But that's not the game that we're playing. We're comparing them to each other. And I think when you look at it through that context and through that lens, it, as long as you're fair and you're backing up. I was talking to a caddy one time that was like, hey, Brandel, you know what? He says some crazy stuff sometimes, but he also does a ton of research, and I kind of respect that. Like I think as long as you're fair and people understand you're comparing players, whether it's in the NBA or golf, to each other, I don't buy into the whole, well, you've never been in this position. It's like, yeah, of course. That's why I'm sitting here writing about it instead of playing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like nobody would choose to be writing or talking about a sport versus being the athlete in the arena doing it, right?
Yeah.
So there's always, and that's what happens with the retired players. I think like there's always that there's kind of that friction between, you know, like the friction with Shaq and what Charles Barkley, how they just let it fly, and the modern players, you know, like just I mean they just let it go. And it's like there are different areas like of their lives, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to be clear though. I said this, I meant to send a tweet out about this. I think you're the ultimate member guest partner. Nope. I've never played with a player of your skill level that has the sheer power and the explosiveness that you have. I mean, if you're an uncapped member guest situation where you don't have the handicap discrepancy, you want to win. Bring Kyle Porter because you got a guy that's got 330 in the bag.
We can put my address in the show
The show
notes.
notes.
People can send me their club, and we'll travel. We'll get an RV. We'll just take the family around the country and just hit up some clubs this summer.
That would actually be a great book idea. Is like I hit the member guest circuit with my entire family in an RV. And I played all these all these different clubs member guests.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, that would be insane. But yeah, I'm very, very available.
All right, that's what the PGA at Valhalla gets. It gets an intro in about golf media and everything. Just a couple housekeeping. So last hosted 2014. Obviously that was Rory's last major. Rory beats Phil, Ricky, Henrik Stenson's on that leaderboard. Other major championships it's hosted. It hosted the 96 PGA. Mark Brooks beat Kenny Perry. The infamous 2000 PGA where Tiger and Bob May had their showdown duel. One of the most memorable tournaments in, forever. That iconic moments. So golf course wise, not a ton to be excited about, but we've seen this with the PGA countless times. Golf course, can certainly help lift a championship, but is not dependent on a championship. So Kyle, we're doing our 5 things about the PGA. What is your first thing or anything. It doesn't have to be in order. None of mine are in order. I got about 7 or 8 written down. I'm gonna riff off yours here.
Yeah, I've got 6 written down. I'm gonna start actually with I'm gonna start with the Live Boys.
All right,
And
this is one of mine.
I think that we're at an interesting. This shouldn't be that big of a deal because I think the PGA of America has done a good job of putting a good field together. I think one thing that gets lost, I was talking about this with somebody the other day. A lot of these guys that got invited got these special exemptions from the PGA of America into the event that are on Live. They were in the tournament last year too. And you could argue like, well, they were still top 100 in OWGR back then. It's like, well, yeah, but they were also like Taylor Gooch got into the field, got invited into the field last year, just like he did this year. So I don't know that it's this grand statement by the PGA of America, but I do think because of what Gooch has sort of said, there's this weird spotlight on the sort of middle to lower tier of Live player, the guys that aren't Brooks and Rahm and Cam Smith, who have all played well at this tournament in the past couple of years. There's a spotlight on the Patrick Reeds, on the Taylor Gooches, and I think that's, I don't know if it's fair, but it's brought about because they talk a lot of trash about, we need to be in the field. We're this should be a thing, and it's like, well, okay, let's see how we do in the first kind of the first really open big field major of 2024.
Yeah, I agree with this. I think it's actually like a moment for the other majors, whether it's the US Open, the Open Championship. They get a chance to kind of sit back and see what happens, and they get to make their decisions. And I don't think it's necessarily like a smart practice to react off of, what happens 1 week of the year, but there's only 4 of these majors, so it isn't like an opportunity to have like a wide ranging sample size to really like make a decision off of. But like in the terms of like Burmeister, Gooch, people that don't technically qualify, if they play well, I have to think it will help their case for other exemptions into whether it's the Open or the US Open. If they play poorly, I don't know if it'll have a negative impact, but I think it will be a thing. It's like, hey, they didn't play well. We still have this problem where it's like a top heavy competition over there. The bottom of Live's really bad. I mean, I don't think Anthony Kim's helping the bottom of Live.
No.
That being said, Siwon Kim, the worst player in Live history, made the cut at last year's PGA.
The worst player in Live history. What a statement.
I don't know. James Pyatt. I meant to post this on Instagram. I saw James Pyatt was like duking it out on the minor league tour the other day, and I just thought, man, from the high flyers, Phil Mickelson's team, to minor league tour in less than a year, that's tough. That's got to be a tough transition, doing 1-day South Florida events against mini tour pros after you were, playing for $20 million a tournament with 54 guys or whatever.
Yeah, that's brutal. I think the PGA Championship is also sort of uniquely positioned to invite some of these Live guys, right? Because the Masters is obviously very small and has very specific and unique criteria. The Opens they set aside
opens.
Right. They set aside like half the field, right, for qualifying in. And the PGA is like the one that the bottom, fifth of the field, fourth of the field is kind of just, I don't want to say filled in
guys
randomly, but it's just like kind of filled in with whatever they decide. Remember at Kiowa when Ricky Fowler hadn't qualified and he got a special exemption? And you're like, well, that felt like a sponsor exemption almost, right? Where it was almost like a tour event where you get these sponsor exemptions, which I've come to really dislike. Specifically, it's the signature events. I think it's just not a great thing. That's a whole different conversation. But the PGA Championship is very.
Should we talk about signature events?
No, I do not want to. The PGA Championship is very uniquely positioned to kind of have the loudest voice in some ways on the live debate, and I think they've handled it like fine. I think I don't think they've invited anybody egregious, and I think who they've invited has been like, yeah, if this was everybody was still together, these are probably the players that would be in anyway.
Yeah. I think there is like I mean, these guys deserve to be in the field.
Yeah,
a lot of them. I mean, it's and I think we need to we've gotten to a point with professional golf where it's so turned up upside down. A lot of times, what the reasoning behind anything it should be is, does this make sense? And I think this does make sense. So.
Yes.
I think that we've gotten too far down does this work? Does this work? And it should be, hey, this is the way it should, this is the way it should be.
Yeah.
All right. My first thing, I alluded to it earlier. We're not quite at 10 years of major championships. We're too short of 10 years just because of the change of the schedule, but we are 10 years removed from Rory's last major win. And it happened at this exact tournament, Valhalla, the PGA. I mean, this is just a crazy story. I mean, if you go back 10 years, who would imagine that? I prepared a couple things from 2014. You ready to go in the time machine and go back to 2014?
I don't know if that feels like, I mean, personally, it just feels like a lifetime. I mean, I only had 2 kids then.
All right, so a couple things from 2014. It was really when Instagram started to pop up as a real thing. So Instagram was really taking hold in society. And you know how you know that Instagram was taking hold? What was happening then?
The filters?
The Ice Bucket Challenge.
Oh gosh.
Do you remember the Ice Bucket Challenge?
Yeah, that was the Rory and what's her name? Meghan Markle.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do. I didn't even put that in there. Unbelievable. So yeah, the Ice Bucket Challenge 2014. Other thing, Hunger Games was really big in 2014.
Wow.
Taylor Swift's 1989 album came out. One Direction was a big thing still then.
I think Niall Horan's on tour more than some guys that have their card are on tour. He's everywhere.
Bill Cosby happened in 2014.
Wow.
And a big term that got kicked around was on Fleck and Bay. Bay became popularized then before anything else. These are just a couple 2014 items, as well as Rory's last win. I mean,
people tune in to hear 2 40-year-old men talk about the term Bay, I think is why they listen to this podcast.
Had to get it in there. You gave me 5 extra minutes. This is what the 5 you're running 5 minutes behind. This is what the 5 minutes. I
only blame myself for this then.
This is the research that was done in the 5 minutes. So yeah, I think this is obviously outside of, you've got Scottie. I think this is the big story, right? You got this guy that was seemingly headed to 10. And
yep.
I don't think it's crazy to see him get to 6, 7, 8, possibly. He ripped off 4 so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's a better player now than he was then. But to have him 10 years removed it's to me the number one thing to watch here.
Yeah, I think there's 3 primary storylines at this event. You mentioned 2 of them. It's Scottie, Rory, and then I think Brooks going for 6 is I would throw in there as well. But the Rory thing, I think the thing, don't come to you and I for objective Rory takes, but I think the thing that is worthy of critique for him is it's not the last couple of years. I think people looked at at St. Andrews and they looked at LACC and they're like, oh, dude can't close. And that's not the takeaway. The takeaway from that is that from 2015 to 2021, he gave himself so few chances to win major championships. And that was like his age, I think 26 to 32 major run. Man, that's your like major winning historically. That's like a really great time, maybe toward the like into your early 30s to win major championships. And he gave himself almost no chances to do so. 2018 Masters, kind of. There might have been one or two others that were sort of in there, but I think that has been the real disappointment for him of the last 10 years is that 2015 to 2021 run.
You hear it in his when he talks about it. You know, like I'm giving myself so many more chances now. I think like the thing that's challenging with Rory when you look at this is, I think a lot of people, and it's another one that I think is a storyline here. But you look at someone like Jordan Spieth, and you're like, maybe he just played his best golf at age 23, 22. That I don't think you could look at Rory and the player he is now, the way he can play a lot of different setups.
Yep.
And I don't think you can look at it and say, like, you know what? He was just way better then, because I think he's better now, which is the weird thing about this whole 10-year drought, is that he has improved as a player. It's not the typical golf story of like, oh, he had it then and he doesn't have it now.
Yeah.
And I think there's like one of the things, I think he's giving himself more chances now, but he is missing a little bit of the old Rory that put the gas pedal down and just went.
Yeah. Valhalla is a great example of that, right? It was Phil and Ricky fist bumping, Rory's pissed, and Sean Zock used the term the other day. He was so addicted to club twirling that he even club twirl bad shots. And you're like, yeah, that was who he was. And he's talked about that. Like he said, I think he did a Q&A with Jeff Shackelford that was really good for the quad.
Yeah, that was a great Q&A.
Yeah, it was excellent. He said golf was my life. Like that was it. And he's like, that's not true anymore, which I think is something that I've always, it's hard to reconcile, right? Because I admire that about him as a person, that's not his entire existence like some of these guys, but I think it can maybe prohibit him from, being what he was at Kiowa and what he was at, Congressional, like some of these like 6-7 shot major championship wins. What's crazy, and you've talked about this a lot elsewhere, the idea of being that good for that long that you would even be a favorite to win majors 10 years apart is really crazy. And I think if he's able to do it, like let's say he gets to 6 or 7 even, that's one of the, I don't know if it's Phil good in terms of his Phil Mickelson good in terms of the longevity and the endurance there, but to me it's kind of in the ballpark of something like that, where it's so hard to be that good for that long. And I think that's been a pretty underrated part of his career so far.
The longevity is unbelievable, especially in this era where I was playing golf with someone who's probably going to be on PGA Tour next year yesterday, and they were talking about like, listen, like everybody just wants to make money and be done, And I think like to have that long career now, it used to be so much like, well, I'm going to keep making money because I want to retire to this lifestyle. Like, especially right now in pro golf, like you see like the money these guys. I mean, Victor Hovland made what, $50 million or something last year.
26. He could be done.
Yeah. Like that used to be an extraordinary career. He did it in a year. With the money that's there, it's not longevity now is a combination of competitiveness, passion for the game, and talent, which it's never been that, because when Hogan or Nicholas was playing, you were playing no matter what, as long as you could to maximize those earnings, right? Like these guys are getting to retirement sums of money so early in their career, like retire and live life exactly how you want to live life.
Yeah.
Sums of money. It's so early that like the longevity thing, it's more impressive now than it's ever been.
I agree. I mean, I used to say this about so I used to cover college basketball, college football, and people used to say like, "Oh, those college kids, they just love the game." And it's like, no, that I mean, maybe they do. The guy that really
It's
loves the
such a
game,
cliche.
for sure. But the guy that really loves the game is Kevin Durant, is Steph Curry, is LeBron, who have made a collective $780 million just on the court or whatever the number is, and are still grinding and getting after it. Like those are the guys that really love the game. And I think that Rory is one of those types of guys that really does. I mean, his like what he values is different now at 35 than at 25, but I think his love for the game is even greater. If that, I think those two things can coexist, and I think that they do with him.
Yeah. All right. What's next on your list?
So I've got is Wyndham Clark for real? And so I think there's a couple of things here. Wyndham Clark's the number 3 player in the world, and I don't know if people are.
Can we just adjust that down to 4 for the live community that will yell about John Rahm?
Okay, 4. He's a top 5 player in the world. Let's say that. And I don't know how many of the live community is listening to Andy Johnson, Kyle Porter Friday podcast.
Probably a lot of them. Haters. Hate is a wonderful listening mechanism
for sure. Hate listen. Wyndham Clark has had. I mean, if not for Scottie Scheffler, he could have 4 wins this year, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you guys talked about this a little bit off and on. Like, if you look at the last 18 months, like you go back to the beginning of 2023, he's been unequivocally one of the 3 or 4 best guys in the world, from not only the consistency, but also the play at major championships. And I think that, people don't love him for whatever reason, whether they think that he's, I don't know. There are several reasons maybe to not like him, but I think we're kind of underrating what he is or could be. And this is actually the type of setup, Andy, at a PGA that I think fits him better than like a US Open, which he won at LACC. He's so I was looking at the numbers the other day. He averages like 186 ball speed off the tee, or 185 maybe. It's something insane. And at a big ballpark like Valhalla, it just seems like that's the type of thing that plays into his hands very well if he can keep driver on the planet. I think that's the one thing where it's like, okay, LAC is maybe a little bit more open, so maybe that helps him out. But I think he's in the middle, potentially in the middle of a run that we'll look back on and say, man, that was really impressive, and it got overshadowed a little bit by all the live PGA Tour stuff and by Scottie Scheffler.
Do you think that people aren't Wyndham people? And I think this goes with Scottie Scheffler too, because those guys are just not Rory McIlroy or Jordan Spieth. Do you think, or even I think even like John Rahm? Like, do you think that is the precipice of like why people aren't that into him? Is because it's just they aren't the guys that they really want to win?
Possibly. By that, do you mean they weren't prodigies? Like, because
yeah,
Wyndham and Scottie were both very, very good amateurs, but they weren't like Rory was a prodigy, right?
Yeah,
and
Spieth was a prodigy.
Rahm was up there too. And so it's almost like they've come in a little bit later, even though it's still early by most professional golf career standards. And people are like, wait a second, who are you again? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I just think that there's There's like 5 golfers that people are fans of. It's like Tiger, Phil,
John
Rory,
Daly.
Jordan Spieth. Yeah, John Daly. I think is he playing? Is he still in this?
I think so. I don't know. I'll look up the field.
um, but yeah, there's only a handful of players that have real fans.
Yeah.
So I think when anyone outside of those people win, it's like I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
Or like nobody cares about him. I think it'd be a hard thing to be one of the 10 best players in the world at something and realize that like the greater interest of the sport doesn't really care about you.
Well, I mean, this was such a thing in tennis for so long, right? Where you could have been the 5th best guy and people are like, what? Who?
You don't even know. Like it was like Andy Murray and who else was the, outside
It was
of
like
Rafa?
it was like Stan Wawrinka.
Yeah.
I can't ever say his last name.
Yeah,
Del Potro, Martin Del Potro, right? And just guys that you're like, this guy's literally like one of the best that's ever done this, and people are like, where's he from again?
Yeah, because the other 3 are such larger than life figures.
Yeah, I think there's for sure some of that. I don't know, man. I think a lot about I actually think about this question of why do fans like a specific person more than another? I think about that idea a lot, and I think there's some intangibles there that you just like a almost like an aura or a presence. I'm reading this Mickey Mantle biography right now that's very good by this woman named Jane Levy. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but there's a great quote in there where one of his teammates said his aura had an aura, and I think that's true with some of these guys. It's like, well, why? Like Jordan Spieth, there's nothing special about, you look at Jordan Spieth and you don't think like, you look at Tiger and you're kind of like, okay, I get it. Like from breaking some race barriers, from being like like all this stuff. Spieth is just like a normal looking white dude that was really good at golf at a young age. But there's something intangible there that's impossible to explain that I feel like plays into the way that we think, root for, and talk about some of these guys.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then, to your greater Wyndham point, I mean, the guy's been incredible. And I agree that this is a great fit for him. And if you're, I always like to, like, it's like the back of the napkin. If you just wrote down your favorites here, I think it would go Scheffler. And then in that number 2 spot, like, it's not crazy to have Wyndham there, which is,
Yeah.
16 months ago, if you said this to you, if I said this to you, you'd be like, that's absolutely bananas.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think this is a great spot for him. I think really like, I mean, what you said, like without Scottie around, this guy might be number 1 in the world.
Mm-hmm. I know.
All right. We've talked about him. He's going for the career Grand Slam.
I did not have this on my list. I don't think it's worthy of being
I just have it because are we at the lowest buzz moment ever for a career Grand Slam? Like, is Phil at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst going to have more buzz for a career Grand Slam than this?
Well, there was one, I think it was Bethpage, where it was like, yeah, there's, and then that he actually finished like T3.
I have that in here. I mean, he had the Whistling Straits second, which was like a duel, him and Jason.
Yeah,
that was
really
awesome, epic tournament. And that was Spieth at the height of his powers, and Jason Day really at the height of his powers.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great tournament. And then you got the completely non-competitive Bethpage. I think he led the field in like strokes gained putting by like an absurd number and finished like 7 shots back. I think that might have been like the very start of my just a guy take.
I remember. I think he played with Brooks on Saturday because I think he somehow got into the final pairing. I think he was like T2, And I remember following them and thinking, like, this guy doesn't even know where the center of the club face is, much less, like, is he able to find it? I mean, it was shocking how bad he hit it and how good he scored. So, yeah, I think there have been other events that PGAs that he's entered with a lack of buzz, but this is down there, I think, with all of them.
Last four PGAs: T71, T30, T34, T29. So pretty lackluster since that Bethpage kind of rabbit out of the hat. But just in general, for a big name player going for the career Grand Slam,
Yeah,
nothing. Phil will have more buzz at Pinehurst.
yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and mention my next one. This is my third one because I think it plays into what you're talking about. I think PGAs have become a very, like, the PGA of America has a type, if we want to say it like that. And what I mean by that is golf course. You know, they've started going to these like big, brawny, beefy, you know, built up rough golf courses, and that's not great for Jordan Spieth. You know, it
pretty narrow fairways.
Yeah, it lessens the I think the number of guys that could potentially win the tournament, which I think can be actually good for your brand overall, for the casual fan, because they want to see the Brooks and the Hovland and the Scheffler and the Rory. But it's I don't know that it's great for the game specifically, and I definitely don't think it's good for Jordan Spieth and his. You know, we haven't talked about it a ton. I know it's been talked about behind the scenes, but I think the risk thing is not nothing. And to be at a tournament like this where rough's grown up and you're just kind of hacking sometimes. I don't. Maybe they won't grow it up like they did at Oak Hill. I haven't seen any. We haven't gotten our first rough video yet, but
it's coming. It's gotta be right around the corner. It might be out before this is released.
I don't see this as being a very good fit for Jordan Spieth.
Yeah, I don't see it being a good fit. I just and I do agree with your take here about the type. I mean, there's some golf course similarities, but you know, I think it's the Kerry Haig era of setup, and I think he gets a lot of credit for the championships he produces and the fairness and, you know, all of that. But I will say that, like, there is no evolution. It's kind of the same playbook year in, year out. And I think, like, outside of, like, I think you put like Kiowa kind of in its own box, and Southern Hills. I thought Southern Hills was great too, in terms of like variety of golf courses. But now we're heading into this murderer's row here of Valhalla and Quail Hollow, where you know what you're gonna get. And I think the PGA, in a sense, like, you have it's like a souped up PGA Tour event, right? It kind of feels like what the Players wants to be, you know, a major that's really just a bigger PGA Tour event.
But I would argue that the Players has more going for it in turn, like from that standpoint, than the PGA, because it's got, I think, TPC Sawgrass. Do what?
It's the recognizability of the course.
Yeah, right? And I think TPC Sawgrass can offer more variety than not than Kiowa or Southern Hills. I agree with you on those, but you go Oak Hill, Valhalla, and Quail Hollow right in a row, and it's like, is that kind of just all the same golf course in different locations? You know, that can be what it feels like at times. What about Harding Park? I'm not as deep on
Harding Park. I think Harding Park would file under this type of golf course.
Okay.
Valhalla, you know, like, from an architectural features thing, like, Harding Park's like about rough.
Yeah.
It's rough and heavy air.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think, like, here you've got, you know, some hazards, some bunkers, but it's going to be, it's an execution tournament. And I think that's, you know, I'll go to one of mine here. We're just knocking these down. That's the thing. When you're not, you know, Trevor, you know, we're just going 1-to-1, you know, you brought up Trevor, and This is what we're two media pros here. We're just going knocking down things here. But I'll say, like, this is, Brooks Koepka, right?
Yeah.
When we start to zoom out of like the Brooks Koepka archetype, he's got the chance to go down as the greatest PGA player of all time, which I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things. I think anybody would want to be the best Masters player or the best Open Championship player. But, like, he's got 3 of these things. It feels like a really good chance for number 4 with him winning the Live event last week and seemingly turning some corners with his form. I think he's got to be in your first 5 favorites, first 3 favorites, really. And, like, you start to look at it, if he gets another one, it's Jack with 5, Walter Hagen with 5, which Walter Hagen was playing in when there was match play. And then you got Tiger with 4, and Brooks is right there. Like, this is an insane thing. He's going for the 6th major. He's doing it in a completely different way than anybody we've ever seen. We've never seen somebody with such low volume of wins, with such a high volume of major wins, right?
Yeah.
And I just think one of the things, like, we could zoom out 20 years from now and be like, you know what? Like, Kerry Haig, just, his setup philosophy was just tailor-made for Brooks Koepka. And I think there's also some intangibles there with Brooks, his demeanor, his attitude, his and a lot of it, his talent. But these tournaments, just like, I mean, this one just seems to be just absolutely perfect for him.
Yeah, for sure. Kerry Haig, the Brooks Whisperer.
Seriously.
I think you mentioned the 3 guys that have won 4 or more PGAs, Tiger, Jack, and Walter Hagen. I've got another number for you here. It's since 1980, so that's what, last 40, almost 45 years. Only one golfer has won 6 majors by age 34. And obviously that's Tiger. And Brooks just turned 34. The thing that I wrote about him last year after he won at Oak Hill was, he joined, I think it's a group of 20 guys that had won 5 majors, and 20 is just, I wrote 5 majors is so many and 20 guys is so few. Like, it's just so, like, every level now is a different, I mean, he's a couple away from Arnold Palmer, which is just crazy at his age. I mean, this is the age that Phil started winning majors, and Phil got to 6. Now, do I think Brooks is going to have the career longevity of Phil? I don't. But I think he said something interesting after he won Live Singapore, Andy, and that was, he gave this quote about how I'm willing to go to a place that not a lot of other guys are willing to go. And that can come off a little bit as, just Brooks being Brooks and saying his cocky stuff and whatever. But I do think that his willingness to enter a mentality of committedness and discipline to each shot at the majors is really admirable. And I kind of theorized the other day, does the energy he expends on committing to every shot and being that focused at major championships almost take away from, like, he's just unwilling to go to that place at other tournaments, which is why he doesn't win as much. And I think that might be the case. Like, I think he's just unwilling to expend that energy, mental or emotional or whatever it is, at majors, at a random, formerly a random PGA Tour event and now a Live event.
It's similar to, like, what we see with playoff basketball and playoff hockey.
Yes.
Right? Like, everybody, like, oh, playoff hockey is the best. Nobody could play playoff hockey like this for an entire season.
Correct.
And maybe that's just the way it is. Same with playoff baseball. Same with, I mean, the NBA, like, just the attention to detail, possession to possession that these guys have in the NBA playoffs is just at a whole different level, and the intensity is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing. And I think there's also an aspect of golf is that there are people that, when that intensity ramps up, do turtle a little bit. And there's also as the intensity ramps up in golf, one of the things that I always appreciate is that it always shows the weaknesses of players. And I think when you look at Brooks, he's extraordinarily well-rounded. He might not be the best driver of the golf ball, the best iron player, the best short game player, or the best putter. But when it comes to putting all four of those aspects of the game together, there are very few people that have as few, there's no holes. The putter was an issue when he couldn't practice or crouch down to read putts, but when he gets going on in a major run, the putter is just it's one of the best things he has. Is that he just never gives stuff away when he's going, and it's just that all around talent. You see it with Scottie too. Is that if you do everything really well, it's hard to play poorly. Especially when the level of setup and competition goes up. So I think with Brooks, he always talks about how he's an athlete. Maybe his approach to golf is just that, I'm not going to expend all my energy winning this event that I don't really care about, because I know in the long run, I need to save it for the majors.
Yeah, I think I've tried to come up with ways to explain it because it's historically inexplicable. It doesn't, if you win this many majors, you win at a clip like Rory, which is 25 times on the PGA Tour, right? And do you remember at Kiowa when I compared him to Eddie Taubensee when he was squatting down, reading putts? And then Eddie Taubensee's wife reached out to me on Twitter.
She did?
Yeah, she said, hey, Eddie's, she tweeted this. It was extraordinary. One of my favorite Twitter moments ever. She said, hey, my husband's not on Twitter, but he appreciates that somebody remembers his career. He's out. All he does is fish now. So I'll tell him that you said this.
It's amazing.
What an insane moment.
Eddie Taubensee. So if he wins this, he joins Trevino. If he wins another major, he joins Trevino, Faldo, Mickelson at 6.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be one of 16 players. And I think the other aspect of this that you have to bring up, 6 today feels a lot bigger than 6 in 1990.
Yeah.
That's going to get some people bothered, but it does.
I think that's right. It's hard to look at an industry historically where you infuse this much more money and it didn't eventually become more competitive. And I think with Tiger's entrance 25 years ago, you're seeing the and when money started flowing in, you're seeing the realization of that competitiveness. It's just more, there's just more good. I don't know that there's more great elite, generational players, but there's more really, really good players, I think. And it's more competitive now than ever. I don't, I think the other thing is the Brooks versus Rory thing. I think right now, even though Brooks has more majors, you would say Rory's had a better career because he's won more types of majors and he's just won more worldwide.
And it's longer.
But you start to get 2 or 3 ahead in majors, and that becomes a different conversation. And you have to say, you have to look at, is Brooks the best player of, the last, the post-Tiger time? And then, Scottie enters that at some point as well.
You want to talk about Scottie?
Yeah.
Has the baby come yet?
It's
Friday afternoon.
I don't love delving into
personal life,
gestational periods or anything like that. But wasn't she due at the end of April?
I don't know. I think this is the whole thing. And I think Scottie was pretty gun shy to kind of talk about it at the Masters, because I had heard it was 3 weeks out at the Masters. It was a late Masters. So we're probably right in the window. But I think we're actually getting to the point where it's beneficial that it's been this long. Because if he gets it right after, if he was 2 weeks into parenthood I think it would be harder than if it's like the baby comes and it's like, you know what, I got this major championship. I was here for the birth, and now I'm going to do my thing. Then if you're, I think we talk a lot about this, but like golf is such a mental game that like changes in life do matter with how you process, how you think. It's just such a it's not a reactionary sport. It's not basketball where, you're making split second decisions and it's all instinctually based. Like there are thought in having a kid changes the fabric of a person, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
likes to use perspective and what it does to, perspective can hurt you too. It's like what I always go back to the
Padraig.
Podrick quote
Yeah.
about experiences and all, like it's cracked up to perspective can also, it can make you worry more. It can make you, it can make you think about things differently. And for a golfer, that stuff like really, really matters. But like the longer this baby takes, I think the better it is for Scottie. Like I think it's like it's fit. Like I think it would, if there was any negative potential of having a kid impacting Scottie, is if the kid came 2 weeks ago and he's like into week 3 of being a parent, and you're just head spinning like, this is crazy. I'm getting up at, I'm sure they'll have a night nurse, but like I'm getting up at 3 a.m. and having these problems. I haven't slept through the night for 2 weeks.
Yeah. I do think, just the euphoria of having a child, like, could almost, like, yeah, I agree with you. Like, you go to the PGA and you're like, oh, this is an amazing life experience. I want to go win it almost, like, this sounds weird, but it almost frees you up a little bit to go play.
I remember I played a round of golf like right before my daughter's birth, and my head was like, the only we had an induction, so like I had the date was, or a C-section. We had like the date, like,
Mm-hmm.
set, and I was playing like golf like maybe the day or 2 days before, and I mean my head was in a blender. I
Yeah.
was so far away from the golf course, and I'm not comparing playing a major to that, but I remember the round after, it was like, oh, I'm playing, like I was so much more free. So
Yep.
I think if this kid come, I hate that we're analyzing it to this and not just talking about the sheer, but like, from the golf perspective, like he's the best player in the world right now. It's without a doubt, and it would be crazy if he's not in contention. But, you know, you don't know what the kid dynamic is going to be.
It would be funny if Taylor Gooch got in the field, but there was still an asterisk on this major because Scottie didn't play.
Yeah. I mean, it's not at this point. Is it out of the question?
I literally just got a text from some different people that they think that that this has happened. Now,
Okay.
this is a couple people removed, so I don't know, but
You're in the plex. You're right there.
yeah, I need to start dialing into some, generating some HIPAA violations, just see what's going on in the Metroplex. I think the story with Scottie, we've already discussed, I think, one half of it, which is like, where's he going to be at mentally? Is he even going to play all that? I think the second half is, I genuinely think the Grand Slam is in play. And that sounds crazy. I think it's almost impossible to win the Grand Slam in the modern. I mean, nobody's ever done it, right? And especially in this era, which we talked about, I think is probably more competitive than ever. And it's extraordinarily difficult, but he is playing at a level that I think people are not. And he was doing this last year, Andy. He did this last summer, and the putter wasn't there, but it made me go back and look at some of Tiger's years, and I compared it to, I think it was 06 Tiger, where he won like his last 6 events of 06, and they were playing at the exact same level, tee to green. Tiger was just started putting better, and now Scottie's hit that run where he's putting it better than he was, still not great, but good enough, and much better than he was, and he's won 4 of 5. And if Spieth can get within, what do you get within 4 guys of winning the Slam in 2015? He lost to 4 guys that year.
Yeah.
3 at the Open, and Jason Day. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's inconceivable to think that Scottie could take it to Pinehurst, which would be it'd be a really, really cool story to have the Slam Alive going to Pinehurst for the third major of the year.
I mean, when you talk about course fit, I think this one it's every course is a great fit for Scottie, but this one might throttle back a little, like in terms of spectrum. If I was going to build a golf course for Scottie, it's like Augusta. I think Pinehurst #2 is like an extraordinary fit because that's going to be such a ball striking. It's going to be about getting up and down and hitting really good iron shots. And I don't know anybody that's better at those two things. It's like Scottie, Cam Smith. Like if Cam Smith's playing really on his game, like that Pinehurst setup is going to be really dynamite for him. And then you go to Troon. Like I definitely think it's like one of those years. If I offered you a bet, double digit players beat Scottie Scheffler in majors. Like, and if somebody beats him twice, it counts as 2,
Yeah, so,
right. Double digit players beat Scottie Scheffler in all 4 majors this year. Would you take the over or under of that?
I would take under because we've seen it happen, not just with Spieth. Brooks did it recently, or it was close. It was like right around 8, 9, 10. And Rory did it recently. Rory did it in it was close. It was 2022. He finished second at the Masters, third at the Open, and he was like top 7, I think, in the PGA and the US Open as well. So we've had a bunch of guys that are close, and he's already, I would take the under, honestly, that seems insane. Like that seems like a crazy thing.
Insane thing to think about. Like I played the 4 hardest golf tournaments with the best players in the world, and only 5 guys beat me all year.
Well, I think that it's not, for me, it's not just about this year necessarily. If you go back to, I've got the numbers right here. If you go back to 2020 at the majors, so the start of 2020, he missed the US Open that year. I think he had COVID, but he is about a half stroke better from tee to green at the majors than the next best guy. He's 2.72 from tee to green. Zalatoris and Rory are 2.26 tee to green. That's 2.26 strokes gained per round. So he's, what is that, 2 strokes per tournament better than the second best guy from tee to green over the last 4 years. That's an enormous difference. And yeah, I mean, a million people have said it, but the putter is good enough right now that, and I think mentally, he said this after RBC Heritage. He said, mentally, I'm just in the best place I've ever, mentally and emotionally, I'm in the best place I've ever been in. And I think you can see that. He just looks so much freer than he did even earlier this year when he was like, I remember Bay Hill, he missed a couple putts early and he was like, it's super, super frustrating. And he just looks like he's playing incredibly free golf right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, he's in the best place. It's what you always say about golf. When you get it going, it feels like you're never gonna lose it. And when you lose it, you feel like you're never gonna get it back. And he's at this stage where it's like it's inconceivable. I'd be surprised. Honestly, would you be surprised? Be more surprised if he won, or more surprised if he shot around over 71 next week?
More for sure, more surprised if he shot around over 71.
I think these are the types of questions that like get to where we're at with Scottie, right?
Yeah, he's only done it, I think, 3 times this year. Now, maybe Valhalla is set up crazy, and I don't, I might change that answer next Wednesday. But
I don't think it's. I mean, these PGAs are usually 8 to 14 under, right?
Yeah. John Daly is in the field, by the way.
Insane.
Can I talk about my number 1 story?
Yeah.
Blockie. No, Scottie was my number one. I did want to give a mention. I don't know how many I've done, but I did want to give one quick mention because I think this guy is kind of in a good spot right now, and that's the old thick boy, the newly slim boy, Bryson. Played really good at the Masters. He played very good at Oak Hill last year. Oak Hill last year was kind of the beginning of this new whatever version 9 of him. I don't know what version we're on, but he is. I've called him the High King of content, which he is. It's not enough for him to win the Masters. He has to win them. He has to win the Masters with 3D golf clubs, which is outrageous. But this is when I say, hey, there's like 6 guys it feels like that could win it. I would actually throw Bryson in there. I think he is just so well set up for PGA Championships at courses like this, and I'm fascinated to see how he plays.
I agree. I think like I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. It's like, do I love Bryson? No. Do I really love him for my job? Yes. And I think like when you think about Bryson, like life's hard. The way he was entered into the game, it was with like all these high expectations and most importantly, brands pushing this idea that he's changing golf. He's this innovator. He's all this. And, it was met with a lot of skepticism, a lot of hate. And, I certainly was, one person that was pretty, outspoken, calling bullshit on some of the stuff that was being purported. But I think like you're seeing Bryson as he enters this, I think he's late 20s. And that's when you, as a person, start to figure out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't know who I was until like late 20s, early 30s. I was not like really sure what I was going to do with my life, what I was going to do, like how I was socially, like how I fit in, everything. And I think that like when you talk about like I don't think and I think like mental health obviously it's gotten a lot of run lately in sports, but there is this idea of like I think one of the hardest things about being an athlete is like you're expected to be this person and every move you make is under a microscope at an age when you're still trying to figure out what life is and who you are. And I think with Bryson, like I think the live thing, honestly, like he took a big bag of money. He got ostracized for it, and I think he was like shocked at that. Mm-hmm. But I think like and I'm guessing that like I just think that Bryson wants to be loved. I think that's like what at his core he like wants people to like him. I believe, and you probably would remember. Wasn't there a quote one time where he was like, I was kind of shocked at the reaction of me going, what happened? Was that him that said that?
Yeah, I think it was on I want to say it was on like a conference call or something. I do remember what you're talking about. I don't remember where or when it was though.
But you think about that and I, you grow the most as a person when you have these low moments. And for professional athletes, especially golfers that are phenoms like Bryson, like there aren't a lot of low moments in your life. And I think like, I think we're seeing the best version of Bryson. Like, am I going like, do I want to hang out with him? Probably not. Would I like to talk to him about golf? Yeah. Like he's a very interesting person, but like, I think you're starting to see the best version of him as a golfer, also the most aware as a person, and he's becoming himself. He's becoming comfortable being himself. And I think that is a really powerful thing for your golf game when you are comfortable in your own skin, especially playing at major championships. And I just think like, like for Bryson, like he has had an amazing career already. We might look back and say like the next 5 years might be the best part of his career. And I think that's not off the table. I think he's playing, I think from in terms of like who he is as a golfer, he is a better player now than he was a while ago. Like even when he was winning, he won even that US Open where he just bludgeoned. I think he was pretty one dimensional. I think I think the YouTube stuff's really making him a better player.
We've talked about YouTube improving your game, gestational periods. We've run the gamut here. I think you're right about Bryson. I think it's actually, I think you can make the case that it's more rare for a player of his in the type of spotlight that he was in to mature at a Rory or Spieth rate, and it's actually more common to mature at a Bryson rate. Now, I think the thing that hurt him more than maybe some other guy, like Tiger didn't mature really when he was that age. He just had people around him that protected him from the right things or from the wrong, whatever, however you want to say that. And Bryson, I don't know that he's had those people around him. And so he has just looked a lot worse, and he's, not self-aware and all those different things. But I think it's very insightful for you to say, like, it's very hard to mature into who you're going to become. And even more so when you're in the spotlight, and even more so when you don't surround yourself with people that kind of save you from yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like as I zoom out on Bryson's career, and I think we've gotten to the stage where it's possible and we've seen kind of different versions, like the failing of Bryson early in his career were the brands and the people that were around him that didn't protect him from the brands and himself. Right. I think that's the thing is like when you look back on everybody's career, there are moments in time where there are, you're going to have regrets on different things and they didn't handle things the right way. And for Bryson, it's going to be, there was a period of time where like you didn't have the right people in his ear, or he lost sight. I think like you have to blame him too. He lost sight of who the right people are, because obviously like he's rededicated to what got him there the last year and a half. And he talked about that a lot at last year's PGA Championship. One last thing. I think like we got to this point where it was like kind of everybody we felt like should have won a major had won a major. I feel like this is like a constant ebb and flow with majors where like people start to get one and it's like, oh yeah, like when Sergio won, it's like, yeah, he deserved a major, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Scottie got one. Like, well, he belongs. And we've had like this run of different guys. But like I feel like we've got the pen is starting to fill back up with people that haven't won majors. And you got Hovland, Xander, Cantlay, and I think it's way too early to put Ludwig in there, but he's going to naturally go in there just because of the talent level. You got Max Homa, who's playing really great golf. Finau, yeah. So I think that's just one thing I have in mind is that I think that lately and very well deserved, the focus of majors has been around a couple guys, and we haven't even mentioned John Rahm, who can't be happy. First mention at minute 60 of this pod, or 60 something of this pod. But we've kind of refilled the tank of guys that are really talented players without major championships, and I think that's a I think first time major winners, when they're really well deserved first time major winners, is always a fun story.
Who is that? Is it Xander that's the most deserving major winner?
I think so. What do you think? I mean, Hovland was so good last year, but Xander's been so good for 5 years.
Well,
6 years?
Xander statistically, I think, is the most deserving. I think if you actually watch golf, it's Hovland's up there, Fleetwood's probably up there. Just in terms of like major play, like Xander's. I mean, we've joked about it a bunch, but he's got all these top tens at majors. But like, have you ever thought, oh, Xander's going to win this major championship?
Maybe the Open, Molinari's Open at
17,
Carnoustie.
18.
That was because Tiger, Kisner, Molinari.
That's when Spieth got the haircut.
Yeah.
I think Spieth and Xander were I think they were in the last pairing.
And he had that. Wasn't that? Didn't he have the baby cry when he had that chip? Right? Remember that?
I think that's right.
And so
Rory
like
was
that.
in that one. That was actually one that Rory could have won.
Yeah.
He was T1 with like
Listen,
4 holes left.
Rory has $1 million he could have won if he went out in 27.
Well, yeah. I did love Joel Beal's tweet at the Masters. Happy if Rory goes out in 29 to all who celebrate day.
It's so yeah. But yeah, I think Xander maybe. I mean, Hovland is recent, but I don't feel good about where he's at right now with his golf game. It seems like he's lost in the woods. I heard he moved back to Stillwater.
Did he?
Yeah,
he left the swamp.
I think he's.
I did. My parents live in Stillwater, and my dad said he saw him the other day at the place that he plays.
Yeah, I think he's back. I think he's back in Stillwater.
Okay.
It was a short-lived swamp experiment.
Just a tour.
Well, you know where he was staying in the swamp. Do you know?
No.
So, this guy made $50 million. He decides to move to Jupiter, and he was renting a room from Chris Ventura.
Really? Former teammate,
player on the Corn Ferry Tour. So this guy makes $50 million.
That's
last
incredible.
Year, and he's renting a room off his college.
That's
teammate.
like when Ricky and Cam Tringale used to room together.
Yeah,
I think they used to live together in Florida.
But did Ricky own the house? I mean, like,
I don't know. Yeah, probably.
You would think that it would be the opposite. That Chris Ventura is renting from
Victor.
Maybe
he's trying to help him out. Maybe he was overpaying him or something.
It's just an amazing. It's just there's so many great like Victor's just a normal dude but like the idea that like anybody that's got I mean his net worth with sponsorships and everything's got to be through the roof right now. He decides he's moving somewhere and he moves in with his former teammate and rents a room.
There are. I was just thinking about Stillwater. He could buy like 600 acres in Stillwater. He could buy like half the town. I did laugh. I forgot. I think it was Shotgun Star where you guys talked about how Victor showed up at the wrong club.
Yeah, down in the swamp.
That's incredible.
I love the idea of the other club president, that just being like getting like a call and being like Victor Hovland's here to meet with you and being like, okay,
sweet,
let's go talk to him.
I
am basis of why he was there.
I am bummed. He is. I've talked to a couple of people that it just feels like he's the lost boy right now, and that's a bummer. He was so. I mean, I think you think back to a year ago, he kind of stared Koepka in the eye and hit one bad shot, you know, on 16.
You kept waiting for him to fall apart, and he just never did until the very end.
Yeah, that the getting out of the bunker on the fairway bunker on 16. I thought he was really impressive, and it made me think like, man, this guy's going to win a major in the next 2 years. And then he went and tore everything down, and his reasoning was insane. He was like, well, he basically said I was playing too good. I didn't think that was sustainable. And you're like, well, that seems kind of fatalistic.
Isn't this why Scottie seems so sustainable?
Yes.
Is that like when somebody asks Scottie what he's working on, he's like, same thing as always. Same thing I've been working on for years. Grip, setup. It's like nothing can go wrong. If that's your mentality, if you know what you're working on and it's all fundamental based, like the idea of playing the best golf of your life, like, and this happens all the time in golf. It like there's dozens of these stories. It's like, I mean, Tiger is an example of this. You're the greatest player in the world. It's not even close. And you decide to just like reinvent your golf swing.
Yeah.
I think like this is a crazy phenomenon. It just speaks to the I always get you always get the people that like, I'm not any good at golf. It's like, well, here's the thing. Victor Hovland was probably the best player in the world in August. And he didn't think he was any good at golf and decided to reinvent himself.
Yeah. And I think this is actually a Scottie, like, I think there's a point to be made about Scottie here where the footwork, it looks crazy and you're like that he can't keep doing this, but it's actually the other way around. It actually keeps him from trying something else because it's so like he owns it so much that he would be probably bad if he tried anything. It's almost like Jim Furyk, right? Where the swing is so wonky that he can't do anything. Like, this is it. Like, this is what it is. And I think you get these guys that are so obsessed with becoming better and so confident in their own ability to do so that they go down paths that they shouldn't be going down. We've seen it a million times, and it helps guys like Scottie that they have this weird trait, this weird thing that they do because it keeps them from those paths, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. All right. Are you all out of things?
I emptied the notebook.
What who's your pick to win?
Scottie.
Yeah. I'm going to take Brooks just for variety's sake.
Very brave, the 5-time major winner.
I do think it's a good Rory week. He's coming in playing well. It's always a good Rory week.
Yeah. Oh, any of those three would be very historically cool. Like, I think if you're us, so you're in the media, you want something that's historically relevant and fun to write about and talk about and think about. And any of those three, whether it's the Slam, Rory finally getting his fifth, or Brooks getting to six, is like really crazy. Any one of those storylines.
The who's your worst case scenario? Real legitimate worst case scenario.
Legitimate worst case scenario. Blockie. I think.
I mean, if Blockie, are you betting Blockie to make the cut or miss the cut?
No, miss. I think it is. Is it like a? Well, how legitimate does it have to be?
I don't know. It's just a throwaway question.
Like, I think a Nick Taylor.
There's no way.
He's really good.
I don't know. I don't think that's possible.
Is Tyrrell?
I think there's like 6 guys that can win this tournament.
I agree. I mean, that's what I've been saying.
I think it's like Scottie, Rory, Wyndham, Rahm, Ludwig, Brooks,
Bryson,
and then maybe Xander. Like, Cam Young seems like he could win this thing too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think there's a lot of people that could actually win.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong, but like, it's the old thing with Brooks, what he used to say, which I think he got a lot of heat for it, but it's like sick. The exact way that someone who's really good at golf thinks about golf tournaments.
Yeah.
So, all right, Kyle, people can read your stuff at CBS Sports. They can listen to you. They can read. I think everybody should sign up for the Normal Sporter. You got anything else going on? You gonna be doing the video too for CBS Sports, I assume, next week?
Yeah, we'll have a set out there with Rick Gaiman and Joe Musso, who's our host. We'll be doing some video from Valhalla. But yeah, the newsletter, Twitter, CBSSports.com. Newsletter's been where I kind of just dump all the crazy, ridiculous, fun stuff, and I really enjoy kind of the creativity that can happen there. So
awesome! I've been enjoying it, and thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.